Welcome to the Westport Library. Today's program will begin momentarily. Supported by Verso Studios, created locally and shared with the world.
Oh, please stop. Really, that's okay. Thank you. I'm just a local guy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Westport Library. We're delighted to have all of you here from town, from out of town. And we have a very exciting evening in store for you, as we do every night when Speaking of Music is at the Westport Library. Tonight in particular is a special occasion because we're going to tackle a subject that is very rarely attempted in live performance because of the complexity of the music of Duke Ellington and all of the ancillary effects, influences, and legends that it has spawned. It's rarely performed live before audiences. So I am honored and privileged to be here tonight for Speaking of Music, which is, if you're not familiar with what we do, we combine a music topic in discussion and talk about a certain kind of American indigenous music with live performance following it. So that gives everyone an opportunity to hear a little bit about what the music is all about, where it came from, where it's going, what it's done, what it's been, whether it's jazz, whether it's folk, whether it's blues, whether it's soul, ragtime, or any other American indigenous music. Because we are Americans and we are proud of our American heritage and our democratic society, aren't we? We're holding on. So I would like to welcome you on the part of the library and welcome you to the library, which, as you all know by now, is no ordinary library. And our hats are off. We're all lucky as hell to have a place like this in our community, for our community and neighboring communities to share and to have programming and experiencing the delightful activities and concerts and programs and opportunities that it provides. I quickly would like to make reference to the fact that we have added some helpers to push us along this year, and I would like to thank out loud the people from Leifer Properties, as well as the Hudson Malone people, Doug Quinn, and the Little Pub people, Doug Grabe, who is now entranced in Dunville's down in Saugatuck, and also to say thank you to Ann Scheffer and Bill Shuffler and Barbara and Joe Pierce, who are helping us out tonight with Gold's Delicatessen. Since 1958, the band is chowing down on every Gold's wannabe known to man right now. So I would tell you very quickly a little bit about what brings us here tonight on my end. I'm a Westport guy. Actually grew up in Weston, but my folks summered in Westport in the late 40s and bought in Weston in 51. So I went to Staples and grew up in Westport, and I always felt I was honored and privileged to have a Westport or Weston upbringing. As I'm sure many of you know, we live in a special part of the world here. And it has spawned a special library with a special opportunity to do things like we're doing here. Just quickly, my history is one of, my family has been in the music business for 115 years. My grandfather was a ragtime composer in the teens and 20s, and he was underscored in about 200 films. He was unknown, undiscovered, and underappreciated, but he is being played around by a whole new army of ragtime piano players and ragtime performers. So it goes way back. My mother lived in the city. She was a jazz freak and worked for Condé Nast when women weren't working in the men's workforce, next to Cecil Beaton at the next desk, and was friendly with John Hammond and Barney Josephson. So she ended up at Cafe Society downtown the night that Billie Holiday was first playing in a white jazz club in New York, because she had, with John, bought Billie Holiday her first dress. So I grew up on African-American music and began listening to stacks of records. Before Sally had the record department at Klein's, my mother had stacks of records playing at home, from Mahalia Jackson, Paul Robeson, Ray Charles, Meade Lux Lewis, Pete Turner, and Teddy Wilson, since I was 8, 10, 12, 14 years old. And I graduated quickly to doo-wop and rock and roll, and then soul music. And I have been an ardent listener and proponent of good American rhythm and blues and jazz for my entire life. After COVID, I began to realize that people were having difficulty because of the political situation in America of talking to each other, and they needed a place to go to talk about subjects and things and discuss. So I decided we would have a moderated speaker panel or two, and I experimented with this idea of having people talk about music and then hear music, and it was incubated in the last 5 years, but really made possible, and thank you very much to the Westport Library for this phenomenal facility with state-of-the-art sound and light and ambiance and people that have made, higher-end musical programming possible, and why we are here tonight for Speaking of Music. End of speech. So Westport is a special place, and I want to quickly thank the library folks here for their help, specifically Alex Giannini, who is not here tonight, but he's here in spirit. Bill Harmer, also the same. Travis, EJ, Robin, Jennifer, David, and Bill for all your hard work and interesting things they do here to help promote and give people a fun night here at the library. But it is my high honor tonight to bring to you a speaker and share his wisdom with you, because he is someone that I only recently found in my life through the musical connection, actually, of the ragtime period. I, about 10 years ago, did a series of evenings for the Blue Parrot when Adam Lebarsky started working in Saugatuck. And I was searching the internet for New Orleans music, and I came up with a group of performers who were playing my grandfather's music as well as New Orleans music. And I contacted one of them, who told me he was interning at the Smithsonian. He was a ragtime buff, and that his boss was also a ragtime buff. And so it was through that connection that I had recently produced the Blues Brothers, ex-Blues Brothers band in Chicago, and I had a relationship with Steve Cropper and Lou Marini, some of the guys in the Blues Brothers, and it turned out that the curator from the museum had an affinity for the dishwasher in the Blues Brothers movie, Lou Marini. And I was asked if I would like to meet this gentleman. So I went to a Northern Virginia Ragtime Society performance that this young band leader had, and I was introduced to the curator, his boss from the Smithsonian, who is our speaker tonight. And that is how that happened, through my grandfather's relationship. And he asked me, yes, you can clap, he's here. And you'll be interested to know, because I did not know this, and it is an important piece of the puzzle here, is that the curator explained to me that our business is American history and the preservation of American history. Our collections and our exhibitions are only possible through the donations of artists who represent some significant piece of American history. And he said further, I believe that the interracial working together of black and white musicians in Memphis in the early 60s at Stax Records was a significant period, and I'm interested in that period. Do you know any of these people? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, would you be interested in working with us at the Smithsonian? We would like to talk to them. I said, well, let me think about this. I'll get back to you in about 8 seconds. So without any further ado, I will give you the information and introduce you to Professor John Hasse, who is here tonight. I would like to read a little bit about John for you, and then I'm going to pass the mic to him completely and be out of your hair for at least 30 minutes. During a 33-year tenure at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History, Curator Emeritus John Edward Hasse developed exhibitions on Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, and Ray Charles, among others. He founded the Smithsonian Jazz Masterworks founded Orchestra, and now celebrating its 32nd anniversary, and International Jazz Appreciation Month, which is celebrated in all 50 states and 40 other countries. His books include an acclaimed biography known as Beyond Category, The Life and Genius of Duke Ellington, with a foreword by Wynton Marsalis, and Jazz, the First Century, with forewords by Quincy Jones and Tony Bennett. As an expert on 20th century music, Hasse is a contributor to the Washington Post and 8 encyclopedias, and has written 50 articles on music for the Wall Street Journal. His media appearances include CNN, CBS, PBS, BBC, NPR, and several documentary movies. He is the recipient of 2 Grammy Award nominations and 2 ASCAP Awards for excellence in writing on music. Hasse earned a BA cum laude from Carleton College, MA, and PhD degrees from Indiana, a certificate in business administration from the Wharton School, and 2 honorary doctorates. Active in cultural diplomacy for the U.S. State Department for many years, Hasse has continued to lecture on leadership, the arts, and music in over 25 countries. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise up and give a warm welcome to Professor John Hasse.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And I think we ought to give a round of applause for the months and months of hard work and the brilliance behind the idea of this Talking About Music to Roger Kaufman. I'm going to tell you a story tonight. The story has a beginning, a middle, and not really an end as yet. It's the story of the man I consider America's greatest all-around musician, Duke Ellington. He was a composer, orchestrator, arranger, bandleader, conductor, piano soloist, accompanist, and musical thinker. And I can't think of any other musician who did all of those things so brilliantly.
Billy Strayhorn, my writing and arranging companion. He wrote our theme, Take the A Train. And now we'd like to do a very special operatic version of Take the A Train. Shepherd.
125 years ago, and just a few blocks from a place we see almost every night on the television news, the White House, a baby came into this world. He became known as Duke Ellington. The boy was destined to become a world-famous artist and celebrity, but he was raised in a segregated Washington, D.C., and a segregated America that treated him as inferior. This man, despite very little formal musical training, would go on to create hundreds of musical masterworks, such as the recording, the video you just saw, Take the A Train. He would receive the highest honors of Ethiopia, France, and the United States. His story is, in some ways, a magical fairy tale. In other ways, it's a story of constant struggle to get over one mountaintop after another. This is a story of a man who would overcome racial, social, and musical obstacles to become an artist of the first rank. He would be esteemed wherever people listened to his music. He would create and occupy his own magnificent place among American cultural heroes, a place beyond any existing category. Imagine for a moment that there was a band composed of 18 virtuoso players. Imagine that the conflicting egos and disparate styles of these stars were held in check by a brilliant leader. Imagine that this leader managed to keep his band together for 50 years. Imagine that he wrote nearly all the music for this band, over 1,700 compositions in all. Imagine that with originality and freshness, his works highlighted the best of his players and constantly broke new artistic ground. Imagine that he led the band through 10,000 recordings, 20,000 performances, and 10 million miles of travels. All of this did happen in the stylized life of Duke Ellington, and the charmed life as well. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to the beginning. The year was 1899, the place a middle-class neighborhood of the nation's capital. There, a boy was born to James Edward Ellington and Daisy Kennedy Ellington. He was a second child. The first died in infancy. "I was pampered and pampered," he said later, "and spoiled rotten by all the women in the family." Finally, he said, when he was 8, his parents let his feet touch the ground. His mother used to tell him, "Edward, you are blessed, you are blessed." And he grew up believing her. It became his private musical belief. And maybe his mother was right, because he gave so much to all of us who care about music. Washington, D.C. was at the time the undisputed capital of Black America. During his youth, the city boasted the largest Black population of any city in the country. Life for Black Americans was generally getting tougher. White racism, discrimination, segregation, and many other injustices. But Ellington's parents shielded him from most problems. And while there was a notable middle class in Washington, D.C., a Black middle class, they faced problems aplenty. In the 19-teens, President Woodrow Wilson, a Southerner, segregated the federal workforce. He had this to say: "Segregation is not humiliating, but a benefit. and ought to be so regarded by you gentlemen. Young Ellington's polite manners, fashionable clothes, and aristocratic bearing led a friend to nickname him Duke. From his father, young Duke was learning how to get ahead by charming people. He'd say to a beautiful woman, for example, "I'm so jealous of your smock." "Well, why is that?" she'd ask. "Because," he'd sigh, "it's closer to you than I'll ever be." Or, "Gee, you make that dress look pretty." Young Duke showed more early aptitude for art and more interest in baseball than in music. But by age 14, he had discovered ragtime piano and began playing for friends and then for dances. He found that there was always a pretty girl at the end of the piano keyboard, and after that discovery, he said, "I ain't been no athlete since." Ragtime and the new jazz music drew Ellington powerfully, and he began composing a little bit. His reputation as a band leader, or as a pianist, then band leader, grew. He named his band the Duke's Serenaders and became a professional musician playing in both the black community and the white. He married his neighborhood sweetheart, Edna. You see, in the early years, jazz was spelled sometimes J-A-S-S. He married his neighborhood sweetheart, Edna, but the marriage was destined not to last. By 1920, New York City had overtaken Washington in the size of its black population. New York was a powerful magnet, drawing the young and ambitious from all over. Secure and successful in Washington in 1923, the ambitious Ellington nonetheless made the fateful decision to move north to the bigger arena of New York City, north to Harlem, where the nightlife was rich and effervescent, and where the Harlem Renaissance was in full swing as the intellectual and artistic center of Black America. Harlem, teeming with life, hopes, dreams, and anger. Harlem in the age of jazz, which, better than any other music, expressed the spirit, pride, and pain of the Black experience in America. After a rocky start in New York, Ellington soon began opening door after door for himself and his band, which he proudly called the Washingtonians. He hired a trumpeter named Bubber Miley, a master of mutes and unusual growling sounds. Miley's playing transformed the group from a polite society band into a bona fide jazz band. Each time that Ellington would add a member to his orchestra, it would give him more variety and tone colors with which to compose and arrange. I'd like you to listen to just a little bit of Bubber Miley's famous solo, both bluesy and beautiful, on Black and Tan Fantasy from 1927. Nobody led a band like Duke Ellington. In 1927, Ellington landed a job for himself and his band as the house band at Harlem's most prominent night spot, the Cotton Club. The Cotton Club reflected white stereotypes of Black people with exotic and African-themed dances. The performers were Black, the audience was white, and the owners were mafia. True. Ellington leveraged his 3+ years there to greatly advance his capacity as a composer and a band leader. He continued to seek out musicians with unusual, distinct instrumental voices. He composed a variety of music to accompany the acts, and he honed his sense of pacing and showmanship. He began to make up his own rules as a composer, to evolve his orchestra's unique sound, and to push against various kinds of limits. Upon joining Ellington, clarinetist Barney Bigard first thought Ellington composed with weird chords. In fact, Ellington was rewriting the rules of harmony, developing his own idiom. The African-American composer Will Marion Cook had urged Ellington, first you find the logical way, and when you find it, avoid it. Let your inner self break through and guide you. Never try to be anybody but yourself. Ellington took those words to heart. A prime example of finding his own way was Mood Indigo of 1930. Ellington turned the usual roles of trumpet, trombone, and clarinet upside down, and the resulting tonal colors had probably never been heard before in all of musical history. Nobody made music like Duke Ellington. By this time, the early 1930s, Ellington was breaking through racial barriers to perform in theaters and hotels previously barred to black people. He would continue to break through barriers and categories the rest of his life. He was now broadcasting frequently on radio and making his first appearances in motion pictures, such as this scene from 1930. Watch the expressive use of mutes. His men make their instruments talk. Leaving the Cotton Club in 1931, he now embarked upon an endless series of tours, though in most cities, he and his men could not get a decent hotel room, simply because of the shade of their skin. Yet everywhere Ellington went, he projected style and dignity. He had become a cultural hero to the young novelist Ralph Ellison and to the photographer Gordon Parks, who later recalled, quote, "Ellington had always been my hero. Unlike black Hollywood stereotypes, he never grinned, he smiled. He never shuffled, he strode. It was always, 'Good evening, ladies and gentlemen,' never, 'How y'all doing?' At his performances, we young blacks sat high in our seats, wanting the whites to see us, to know that this handsome, elegant, sharply dressed man playing that beautiful, sophisticated music was one of us. Ellington kept enlarging his band. By 1932, it had 14 instrumentalists and a singer, Miss Ivy Anderson. The 1930s saw him make two tours of Europe, both of them triumphs. He began writing songs that became hits, like Sophisticated Lady. That, by the way, was the creamy trombone of Lawrence Brown. It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing represents an example of Ellington as musical prophet. He wrote it in 1931, recorded it in 1932, and then 3 years later, the word swing seemed to be on everyone's lips as the swing era was launched. Well, let's listen to a little bit of it.
Don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing. It don't mean a thing, all you gotta do is swing. Makes no difference if it's sweet or hot. Just give that rhythm every little thing you got. It don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing.
When swing music and dancing became a national obsession in the late 1930s, Ellington stood above the pack, continuing to go his own musical way. He wasn't interested primarily in establishing a good beat for dancing, as you could say many of the swing bands were. Rather, he wanted to explore his musical imagination. Most of Ellington's music is highly personal. It's based on a memory, a mood, or an image. For example, one of my favorite Ellington pieces, Caravan, paints an intriguing and exotic picture of some distant place. By the way, it kills me to have to cut all these off midstream, but we've got a lot of ground to cover, and not much time. Ellington's band boasted some of the leading players on their instrument in any style of music anywhere in the world. Some of them collaborated with him on compositions, notably his longtime collaborator, Billy Strayhorn, who wrote the theme song, Take the A Train. Ellington wrote many pieces to highlight the gifts of these players, personalizing his compositions in a way that few composers ever have. For example, there was the brilliant trumpeter, Cootie Williams, the earthy, tricky Sam Nanton, the sublime Lawrence Brown, the clever Rex Stewart, the playful Ray Nance, the romantic Ben Webster, and the rhapsodic Johnny Hodges, my favorite of all his players. You'll hear why listening to Johnny Hodges bend, slide, and slur his notes and play even microtones. Oops, sorry.
We have the good fortune, of course, of having the same musicians to work with over a period of many years, and so we have wound up with a system of very highly personalized writing. So practically every note that's written is written for some specific instrumentalist in mind to take the solo responsibilities.
You probably often heard it said that the band was his instrument. Well, he could play the band for the way he wanted you to sound, you know. And he knew the sound he had in his mind when he wrote it, and he picked certain musicians to carry out what he had in his mind.
Well, personalized arranging is a matter of arranging with all of the better characteristics of the performer in mind, and with deep consideration for the limitations of each one.
Ellington and his players, in my view, rank as some of the greatest musical individualists of the 20th century. But Ellington went beyond individualism. He created his own music, his own style. He created his own category. There was nobody like Duke Ellington. He was so individual, unique, that his longtime drummer, Louis Bellson, who was a good Catholic, I must say, used to tell this story. One day the Pope dies and goes up to heaven. He's met at the pearly gates by St. Peter, who says, "Holy Father, welcome. We've chosen your abode. You go 3 streets to the right. You take the first left, and it's the 4th home on the right-hand side." "Thank you," says the Pope. "But that great big mansion on the hill with the palm trees and the fancy cars, who lives there?" "Oh, that," says St. Peter, "that's where we put Duke Ellington." "Duke Ellington," says the Pope, but I'm the Pope." "That's right," says St. Peter, "but we've got lots of popes. There's only one Duke Ellington." During the 1940s, many Americans went to ballrooms with mirrored balls and danced to the big bands. Ellington's bread and butter was playing playing dances like that, as well as some stage shows. He rarely was invited to give concerts. Then in 1943, he played his debut at Carnegie Hall and established himself as a serious concert artist. After World War II, during World War II, Ellington wrote a civil rights musical. It was in 1941. He called it Jump for Joy. And this is an indication of what I believe was his big purpose in life: to command, not demand, not ask, not beg, to command racial respect for his music, his band, and his culture. After World War II, the big bands were all in trouble, and Ellington's orchestra went into commercial and creative decline. One popular music magazine, Downbeat, which had long been a champion of his, even urged him to disband. As if that weren't a low enough blow, in 1951, Ellington faced the gravest crisis of his career when his leading player, Johnny Hodges, left, along with 2 other top players, to form their own combo. Among them, they had 70 years with Ellington. Hodges had a unique sound, as I mentioned earlier, microtones and swoops and slides. Someone once asked Tony Bennett, "Who's the greatest singer?" He said, "Well, Johnny Hodges, of course." You'll hear a little bit of him on "I Got It Bad, and That Ain't Good." Johnny Hodges had a nearly inexhaustible fund of splendid melodic ideas. I never have heard him play a bad solo, and many of his solos give listeners like me goosebumps. Wow. For 5 long years, Ellington bided his time until he could make a comeback. Then after regaining Hodges, Ellington rebounded to national attention. The band gave a sensational performance at the 1956 Newport Jazz Festival, and Time magazine plasters his picture on its cover. His wit and irony showing, Ellington would say later, "I was born at the Newport Jazz Festival." Ellington's creativity was once again in high gear. He continued to write pieces for dancers, such as Satin Doll, and for the concert stage and recording studio, he wrote imaginative suites, including one on the themes of Shakespeare. Ellington also wrote Broadway musicals and brilliant scores for ballets and for motion pictures. But it was not until 1959, 30-some years after Hollywood invented movie soundtracks, that Ellington was invited to score his first motion picture for a feature film. He responded with a brilliant score for Anatomy of a Murder, starring Jimmy Stewart. This is very different than Ellington's early music, but this next example shows you how broad his brush was. As rock and roll began crowding jazz, Ellington turned abroad for bookings. He and his orchestra traveled to give performances in 65 countries. He sometimes toured for the U.S. State Department as an unofficial ambassador of goodwill and great music. In some countries, Ellington absorbed musical impressions that found their way into his works. For example, the Far East Suite, which really should be called the Near, Middle, and Far East Suite. Here's the movement called, named for a mountain in Lebanon. It's called Mount Harissa. Ellington kept on evolving partly by remaining open to new sounds, influences, and ideas. In this respect, he was like Pablo Picasso or Miles Davis, Frank Lloyd Wright, for that matter. As a result of his artistic growth, Ellington's work of the 1970s sounded very different from that of 50 years earlier, yet it was all identifiably Ellingtonian. Now in his 60s, the honors were rolling in, including Grammy Awards galore and 17 honorary doctorates, postage stamps in Africa, and France's highest award, the Legion of Honor. But one honor eluded him when the Pulitzer Prize Committee rejected him for a special citation. He pretended to be okay with it. He said, "Fate is being kind to me. It doesn't want me to be famous too young." He was 60 at the time, 66 actually. Behind the public facade, however, he was deeply hurt and angered. "What we do, what other black musicians do," he said, "has always been like the kind of man you wouldn't want your daughter to associate with." In 1969, however, President Richard Nixon awarded Ellington the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian award, at a special ceremony at the White House.
In the royalty of American music, No man swings more or stands higher than the Duke.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And the word freedom is one, coincidentally, that we are using at the moment in our sacred concert.
This is the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Of the thousands of items, hundreds of thousands of items, I'll get to this, in the Duke Ellington archives at the Smithsonian, this is my #1 favorite because it probably signified the peak night of Ellington's career. His father had occasionally been a butler for special events at the White House. Of course, he had to enter through the service entrance. Duke Ellington, his son, proudly walked through the front door. The 10-block journey from his birthplace to the White House took Ellington 70 years and 10 million miles of travels. Nobody led a life like Duke Ellington. He just mentioned his concerts of sacred music, and in 1965, he helped christen Grace Episcopal Cathedral in San Francisco with a commissioned work called A Concert of Sacred Music. And we're going to hear a little bit of Esther Marrow singing the Deathless theme, Come Sunday. Johnny Hodges died in 1970, but Ellington continued to soldier on, to compose and create. He was driven to tackle new problems, to create new sounds right up until his death. A lifelong smoker, he contracted lung cancer and died in May 1974, just weeks after his 75th birthday. His funeral, held at New York City's Cathedral of St. John the Divine, was packed with 12,000 associates, friends, and fans. Count Basie wept openly. Ellington's inspiration and leadership were sorely missed, and within months, 3 of his longtime players died. It was hard to believe that he was gone. His suave way, sardonic banter, wily, restless creativity, enormous energy and productivity, his dignity and example, vision and music making, all were ended. But with each passing year, Ellington's star has risen, and now he is enjoying the greatest comeback of them all. Institutions such as the Smithsonian are leading the way. Back in 1988, the Smithsonian acquired Duke Ellington's archives with 100,000 pages of unpublished music that he and some others in his band composed. Can you imagine getting 100,000 pages of unpublished music by Bach or Gershwin? That was a thrill that I felt that day in April 1988 when an effort that had been going on for 3 years that I was leading succeeded, and we acquired this treasure. It's a national treasure. We've cataloged the entire collection, and you can go online and find out exactly what's there. And this set of band parts for Mood Indigo shows you what I was talking about earlier, how he personalized his music. He doesn't list first trumpet, second trumpet, third trumpet. No, he lists the name of the player because he wrote for those specific players. And he had the luxury of many of them staying with him for year after year after year after year. So Ray, that's Ray Nance, trumpet. Upper right, Butter, that's Quentin Jackson, trombone. Bottom left, Jimmy Hamilton, clarinet. And then the last one is Rab, short for Rabbit or Johnny Hodges. We developed this large-scale, 5,000 square foot exhibition on Duke Ellington that traveled all over the country. And to keep his music alive, to make the archive sing, we established an 18-member jazz orchestra. Here conducted by David Baker with guest artist James Moody, and here conducted by Charlie Young of Howard University. This also inspired the creation of special month during April, which is his birth month, Ella Fitzgerald's birth month, Jazz Appreciation Month, every April, as Roger mentioned earlier. And every year, the museum issues a poster. Here's Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday, and this year's poster, Duke Ellington. This is his 125th year anniversary. For generations of Americans and legions of listeners around the world, Duke Ellington's music continues to resonate with cultural and personal appeal. As this next piece demonstrates, we'll get to that in a moment, his music is very much alive. His legacy is alive. Look at all these accomplishments of his. And today, you can hear high school bands playing his music. You can hear symphony orchestras doing his music. You can see ballet companies do his music, and he wrote for ballets. You can find professional musicians doing his music. All sorts of musicians cutting across many genres play his music. And at this time of year, it's appropriate to listen to a little bit of Ellington and Strayhorn's wonderful rearrangement, reimagining really, of the Nutcracker Suite.
It certainly sounds like it's going to be a good parlay, but I know this, that if Tchaikovsky were around and had a band, he'd be playing Ellington probably.
Oh.
But what we want to hear now is Ellington playing Tchaikovsky.
That's our cue, man. Go on.
That was recorded more than 60 years ago. Still sounds fresh, doesn't it? In a century, the 20th, that was rife with so much that was predictable, impersonal, and dispiriting, Duke Ellington, as eloquently as anyone, affirmed the personal, the human, the heartfelt, the hopeful, and the unique. Perhaps that is why his singular music and exceptional life continue to move and inspire so many people. In later years, Ellington used the phrase beyond category as a term of the highest possible praise for someone unique in their brilliance, such as Ella Fitzgerald. Because of the unmatched sound of his orchestra, the extraordinary range of his music, the dedication of leading a band for over 50 years, and the astonishing artistic heights to which his music soared, perhaps no one deserves his phrase, beyond category, more than he himself. And its other literal meaning, the phrase richly applies to Ellington. Nobody led a life like Duke Ellington. Nobody led a band like Duke Ellington. And nobody made music like Duke Ellington. He was truly one of a kind, beyond category.
Hi, everybody. We're going to have a 5-minute intermission to get the band ready. So come back to your seats in 5 minutes.
S-O-N, and then. Where's the special place? Can I get you something? Okay. Hello, folks. Welcome back. How about a nice round of applause for John Hasse, who is here. And I will tell you from my own personal experience, I'll quote my dear Uncle Paul Sang, who used to come into New York for funerals when I was a kid, and would get in the hearse. He was a cut-up, a very wealthy philanthropic drug distributor in Chicago with a great sense of humor, and he'd get into the limousines as there were 5 sisters, my mother's family, and as the funerals would take place, he would get into the limousine, and we would go out to the cemetery for the interments. And he would always be telling jokes, this guy, while everybody was maudlin and really dead death and sorrow, and he was hilarious. And he was a very prosperous and healthy, wise man. And he had a famous saying that I have used my entire life that I think of when I think of John Hasse, and it is, it's nice to be important, Roger, but it's more important to be nice. Way more important to be nice. One of the nicest men on earth is John Hasse, right here. And the man, this is the preeminent scholar on earth for Duke Ellington. So I am honored and privileged, and as we all are, share in the joy of getting to hear this guy speak tonight. Thank you very much for coming. I was going to try to put words together to talk about Duke Ellington, and I figured, you know something, schmuck? If you're going to follow John Hasse, what the hell are you going to say that he didn't say? Which is why you're hearing silence right now. But in his inimitable wisdom, this gentleman got an interview, or somehow finagled a foreword or a prologue or preface from Wynton Marsalis, who had something to say about Duke Ellington. And I would like to paraphrase and quote about Duke Ellington from Wynton Marsalis, because as many of you know who are music buffs and enjoy music like we all do as the universal language, musicians have their own kind of language. But before I do the Wynton Marsalis thing, I would like to pay tribute to a few people who are in the audience tonight, because we have a special crowd and special people who are here because they make Westport, Westport. And making Westport, Westport has enabled us to have a place in the library here where we're able to do things like this. It's always been a special town. It's always been a destination for go-getters. It's always been an interesting arts-oriented and arts-sympathetic supporting community. And I certainly hope so that, speaking of music and other programs that stress the importance of speaking and talking and education and inclusivity and diversity and awareness and education, can prosper here at the library. And I want to thank you all for being here to support this. But I want to recognize the special nature of Westport, because Westport has been home to a number of unique people who are here with us tonight. one of whom is the grandson of the author of It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing, which was a lyric written in 1931 by Irving Mills. And Irving Mills was a very clever and hard-driving businessman who assisted in the growth and prosperity of the Ellington collection and numerous other artists of the time. It's part of a family called in the Wells Publishing family. So would you please welcome the grandson of Irving Mills, Mr. Barry Mills. Please take a bow. Barry. Barry Mills. Some of the other area of achievements of Duke Ellington involved groundbreaking things in racial progress and the acceptance of black and white as being playing the same 8 notes and sharing the same 8 stages. Did a lot for it. And one of the outstanding performers of the 1940s, 50s, who was a groundbreaker in theater and the arts and movies, was Eartha Kitt. You all remember a lot more about Eartha Kitt if you knew what was going on then than coming down the chimney with Santa Claus. But I had the privilege to get to play Happy Birthday to Eartha Kitt at the Georgetown Saloon when she turned 80 and meet her. She was darling and asked our singer to come over and sit with her, made her career. And in the audience tonight, I would like to introduce you to her daughter, Kit Shapiro. Would you take a bow? Kit Shapiro, who's a Westport resident. And Kit owns the company called 50 West. If she's here, take a bow. If she's not, she missed a good one. Very nice lady, a wonderful store called 50 West over on Main Street. I had one more here who I cannot forget because we have in the audience tonight a good example of what makes Westport Westport, and that is there is a rock and roll photographer that lives in Westport, grew up here and subbed for the drummer in the Flamingos, or I think a rock and roll act at the YMCA, who's a friend and partner of mine, whose name is Michael Friedman, and his book, Exposed, is a joyous journey down the business impresario of the 1960s in rock and roll, Albert Grossman. Michael Friedman took pictures along the way and wrote a book about these negatives that were lost in his attic for 50 years that his wife discovered, called Exposed. And he is a spectacular Machiavellian, Michelangelo, current day, swashbuckling, enterprising young man. Michael Friedman, take a little bow, please. Artifacts, Ash Creek Saloon, Friedman Gallery, you name it. He's done it all. So what I'm going to read to you is the preface by Wynton Marsalis from 1993. And then you're going to be entertained by a fabulous band from New York, which I'll tell you about in 1 second. He didn't sleep at night. He liked to eat large meals, steak, vegetables, and grapefruit. He drank Coca-Cola with sugar in it. He hated the color green, especially wallpaper. Duke Ellington liked to eat ice cream. He was constantly clean, sartorially speaking. He was the greatest flirt ever. He respected his elders. He thought that the 13th was a lucky day and Friday the 13th was an especially lucky day. He loved the differences in people and revered originality above all else. He liked kangaroos. Duke Ellington remembered people's birthdays. He was patriotic, worshiped his mother, and was a very good dancer. He liked blue, royal blue, especially curtains. He had good manners and loved New Orleans. Duke Ellington was always calm, even though he was the leader of an orchestra of 16 musicians. All characters, ready, willing, and inclined to express themselves. Duke Ellington touched more people than confetti. He captured the sound of trains, planes, babies, lions, and elephants. He liked simple songs with complicated developments and pretty endings. He didn't change with the style. He developed. He invented a new system of harmony based on the blues, old musical forms that have yet to be imitated. He invented new logics, part writing and orchestration for each composition. In other words, he was slave to no systems. Duke Ellington combined the sensuality of the blues with the naivete of society, music to create blue mood pieces. He understood that music is neither new nor old. He believed there were two kinds of music, the good kind and the other kind. He was the world's most prolific composer of blues. Blues is of all shapes and sizes. Duke Ellington wrote music based on Shakespeare's themes, wrote music to accompany the paintings of Degas, wrote thousands of inventive arrangements for instrumentalists and vocalists of various levels of sophistication. He wrote music in all 12 known keys and some keys that are still unknown. He wrote music about romantic life under Paris skies, wrote music about little bugs and other night creatures, wrote music about countries all over the world, from Nippon to Togo. He wrote music to accompany movies, television shows, ballets, Broadway shows, and the exercise of horizontal options. Wrote music to be played in gymnasiums, street parades, and charades. Wrote sacred music. Wrote music about the human experience. If it was experienced, he stylized it. In other words, Duke Ellington had a lot on his mind. Done. Wynton Marsalis. Tonight's music is an extraordinary honor for us to have in Westport, because in order to perform the music of Duke Ellington, you have to be a qualified, unique, talented, inventive, established, professional outfit. And so I had the blessing of knowing the clarinet and tenor alto player in this organization for the last 10 or 15 years, who happened to have played my grandfather's stuff 20 years ago, which I never knew until he gave me the CD recently. So I want to tell you a little bit about the music, and then the band's coming on, okay? And I'm done. Because my wife told me, don't talk tonight. They don't want to hear you. They want to hear the music, right? It's true. From New York City, our band leader of the New York All-Star Big Band is Mr. James Langton. And the New York All-Star Big Band mixes inherent classic elegance with easygoing humor and natural stage presence. Actually, Langton's soft-toned voice is now internationally recognizable because he is an established leading audiobook narrator and voiceover artist in the US, winning a coveted Audie Award, among others, having made regular voiceover appearances on Letterman and other television shows. Encouraged by key publishers in a rapidly evolving audiobook industry, he set up his own recording and post-production studios in 2009, and James has hosted many rodeo shows on Sirius XM, FDU, and WKCR New York. His show called This Thing Called Swing has been syndicated to numerous stations worldwide. James has a most diverse background. He's originally trained as an actor at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama and performed both on stage and television in the UK, taking the role of Shakespeare's Hamlet in London. After studying jazz in London, he gained notoriety as the singer and band leader of a widely acclaimed Pasadena Roof Orchestra, and formed the first of his own swing big bands in London called the Solid Senders. James moved then to New York, to the metro area, where he has worked since 2001. He's worked closely with renowned swing clarinetist, who's with us tonight, Dan Levinson, to create tonight's New York All-Star Big Band, and is performing regularly at historic locations in the tri-state area and on the road, such as the Rainbow Room at Rockefeller Center, under the New York All-Star Big Band logo. His partner in the band, Mr. Dan Levinson, was the 2017 winner of Hot House Magazine's New York City Jazz Fan Decision Award for Best Clarinetist. Dan Levinson is equally at home as both leader and sideman, fronting his own groups as well as performing those led by others. His roster of musical associates doesn't end with, but starts with Mel Torme, Wynton Marsalis, and Dick Hyman. He's originally from LA. Dan's been based in New York since '83, and although he's busy, he has performed in Brazil with filmmaker Woody Allen's band, as well as Japan, Iceland, Latvia, and 18 European countries. From 1990 to 2010, Dan toured with the singer-guitarist Leon Redbone. Dan's successful, well, let's start with '93. He'd been a member of Vince Giordano's Nighthawks since '93, in the country's preeminent 20s and 30s hot jazz orchestra, with whom he has appeared at Carnegie Hall, Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and Garson Keillor's Prairie Home Companion. His successful Benny Goodman tributes have been presented both in the US and with James Langton's New York All-Star Big Band in Europe, and also with the Berlin-based Swing Dance Orchestra. He's recorded over 150 CDs, including 9 under his own name. Can be heard on soundtracks of films like The Cat's Meow, Ghost World, The Loss of Teardrop, and many others. Dan Levinson, also one of the nicest people on earth. My star attraction and favorite tonight is a singer named Audrey Martells. And Audrey Martells became known to me about 10, 12 years ago when I went to hear a swing band in a church in Peter Cooper Village, or Gramercy Park in Manhattan. And she was singing with the then lead singer of Tower of Power, and a 7-piece band, and I never forgot her voice. We've since become friends, and I'm delighted she is on the band tonight. She was born in London, England, multi-talented. Audrey Martells studied at William Patterson College. She studied with Austin Pendleton, Arthur French, and Raza Kozlas. She is currently touring with Nile Rodgers and Chic, and has toured with Joan Osborne and Steely Dan. Recorded with Whitney Houston, Nile Rodgers, Brandy, Michael McDonald, Britney Spears, and Celine Dion, among others. Her theater credits include The Lady from The Lady Scottsboro Boys, directed by Susan Stroman. Film credits include Blue Bloods, Chicago Miramax motion picture, Save the Last Dance, Shanghai Calling, etc. Known for her powerful voice and dynamic stage presence, Ms. Martells' performance showcases the impact on her by the influential and unforgettable voices of Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, and Sarah Vaughan, all of whom played pivotal roles in the shaping of the history of jazz. Her soul-stirring renditions will bring to life the essence of Duke's music, celebrating its 90-year impact on the world of our glorious American jazz. And now, let's have a round of applause for the band. Here they are, the New York Jazz Band All-Stars, featuring Audrey Martells. Gentlemen. You're welcome. You guys know Soul Man.
Thank you so much. That was Old Man Blues. Here comes a tune I've always called East St. Louis Toodaloo, thinking it was a valediction for the town, but it turns out it's really called East St. Louis Toad Low, which is a kind of, they used to do these kind of funny dancing, walking contests back in the day, and this was one of them, the Toad Low. Here it comes, East St. Louis Toad Low. Well, thank you so much from me, James Langton, from our special version of the New York All-Star Big Band. We're thrilled to be here with you in Westport. What a great venue this is. What a great occasion. Really delight. So we're going to play you one of the popular songs. Duke was never shy of having lyrics written to his tunes. This one began in 1940 as Never No Lament, and Bob Russell added a lyric, and it became Don't Get Around Much Anymore. And here to sing it, the wonderful Audrey Martells.
Good evening, everybody.
Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Missed the Saturday dance. Heard they crowded the floor. I couldn't bear it without you. Don't get around much anymore. Thought I'd visit the club. Got as far as the door. Well, they'd have asked me about you. Don't get around much anymore. Well, darling, I guess my mind's more at ease. But nevertheless, why so memories been invited on dates? I might have gone what for. It's awfully different without you. Don't get around much anymore. Saturday dance. Heard they crowded the floor. I couldn't bear it without you. Don't get around much anymore. Thought I'd visit the club. Got as far as the door. Well, they'd have asked me about you. Don't get around much anymore. Been invited on dates. I might have gone one but four. It's awfully different without you. Don't get around much anymore. Different without you. I don't get around much anymore. Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful, Audrey. Thank you so much. More from Audrey Martells very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. All right, now here's another tune that was mentioned in John Hasse's wonderful talk. This is a tune I think originally was discovered by Barney Bigard with his clarinet teacher, Lorenzo Tio, I think I'm right in saying, and it is called Mood Indigo. You heard from Mr. Mike Davis with the trumpet there, Sam Chess on the trombone, and Dan Levinson with his clarinet. And I was errant not to mention the wonderful alto saxophone solo from Mr. Mark Lopeman during Don't Get Around Much Anymore, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're going to ask our lead trumpet player, Mr. Sam Hoyt, is going to introduce us to that piece of exotica written by Juan Tizol. It's called Caravan. This is not the version in Whiplash, just in case any of you have seen it. My 13-year-old son is very interested in this psychotic music teacher in the movie Whiplash. Clearly none of you have seen that yet, so.
Nobody throw a chair at me.
Yes, that's coming. All right, here we go. Sam Hoyt, ladies and gentlemen, Sam Hoyt. Well, this next number became Duke's theme in 1940. It was a tune that was written by Billy Strayhorn and discovered in the waste bin by Mercer Ellington, thrown away because Billy thought it sounded too much like Fletcher Henderson or so I read. Anyway, it was retrieved, and it quickly became Duke's theme tune, and we're going to add the lyric to it tonight, and singing it for you, Miss Audrey Martells. Take the A Train, by the way.
You better get your ticket, come on. Come on and get your tickets, come on. You must take the A train to get a Sugar Hill way up in Harlem. Well, if you miss the A train, you'll find you missed the quickest way to Harlem. Come on, hurry, come on, it's coming. Come on along and listen to the rails humming. Oh Lord, come on, get on the A train. You'll find you missed the quickest way to Harlem. Ooh, hurry, come on now. Don't you hear the rail humming? You got to listen to the rails humming. Oh, come on, get on the A train. You'll find you missed the quickest way to Harlem. You better get your ticket, come on.
Miss Audrey Martells, ladies and gentlemen. Take the A Train. Well, from the theme tune of 1941, we nip back a year to the theme tune of 1940, because Take the A Train became the theme by necessity, because there was an ASCAP ban in the early 40s, where no tunes published through an ASCAP publisher were allowed to be played. So they had to have Take the A Train to replace this next one, which was one of the... Ellington used to sometimes like to cobble together bits of different pieces. You remember A Day in the Life on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, where you got one John Lennon song and one Paul McCartney song together? Don't applaud for that now. We're playing Duke Ellington. But Duke Ellington sometimes would assemble things from different bits, and this is one like that, called Sepia Panorama. It was originally conceived as an arrangement of Tuxedo Junction, believe it or not, but it became this one. And it featured the band's wonderful bass player, whose name has now gone completely out of my mind. Jimmy Blanton, thank you very much. But it's going to feature our wonderful bass player, Kerry Lewis Jr. Here it comes, Sepia Panorama. Kerry Lewis Jr. at the double bass, ladies and gentlemen. Kerry Lewis Jr. All right, well, here comes Mr. Dan Levinson with the baritone saxophone on another classic Duke Ellington tune, Sophisticated Lady. Named for his school teachers, in fact. Not a cigarette holder holding lady, but his ladies who traveled far overseas, and he called them sophisticated ladies. Dan Levinson, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Levinson. All right, here's another song going to feature Audrey Martells at the microphone. It is called I'm Beginning to See the Light.
I never went in for moonlit skies. I never winked back at fireflies. But now that the stars are in your eyes, I'm beginning to see the lights. I never went in for afterglow, a candlelight under mistletoe. But now when you turn the lamp down low, I'm beginning to see the light. Used to ramble through the park, shadow boxing in the dark. Then you came and caused a spark that's a forlorn fire now. I never made love by lantern shine, never saw rainbows in my wine. But now that your lips are burning mine, I'm beginning to see the light. Never went in for moonlit skies, I never saw rainbows in my eyes. But now that your limbs are burning mine, I'm beginning to see the light. I never went in for afterglow or candlelight on the mistletoe. But now when you turn the lamps down low, I'm beginning to see the light. Used to ramble through the park, shadow boxing in the dark. Then you came and caused a spark that's a forlorn fire now. I never made love by lantern shine, never saw rainbows in my wine. But now that your lips are burning mine, I'm beginning to see the light. I'm beginning to see the light. I'm beginning to see the light.
Yes, Audrey Martells, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Did you ever play that game 6 Degrees of Separation? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so we're going to start with Art Hickman in 1917. Art Hickman wrote a tune called Rose Room. Rose Room. Anybody heard of Rose Room? John Hasse has heard of Rose Room. Shame on you, ladies and gentlemen. Well, cut forward to the 1940s, Duke Ellington takes the tune Rose Room, gets rid of the melody, keeps the chords, and writes a new tune. It's called In a Mellow Tone, In a Mellow Tone. And as Mark Lopeman pointed out to me, that's spelled M-E-L-L-O-T-O-N-E, mellow tone, like one word. Oh, on the record, it says it, on the record. And we've been thinking about, maybe you know why it's called mellow tone, John. Do you know the answer to that? No. We've stumped him, finally. Anyway, skip forward to the 1970s, 1980s. Oliver Nelson wrote an arrangement of In a Mellow Tone for the Buddy Rich Orchestra. And who was playing in that Buddy Rich Orchestra? Mr. Mark Lopeman. And here we are. That's 6, I think. 6 Degrees of Separation. Here we are, In a Mellow Tone, as arranged by Oliver Nelson for Buddy Rich's band. Well, a rather bigger version of Buddy Rich's band than this, but you get the idea. Kevin Dawn there at the drums, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin Dawn. All right, here's, we'll slow it down, a nice, beautiful, soft, romantic tune. It's called Creole Love Call. Caused a bit of a stir because the Duke was accused of stealing it from King Oliver, right? King Oliver, yeah. And it had been used in another piece of music earlier on in 1923. Anyway, the Duke played it, and I guess he won the battle because everybody thinks of it now as Creole Love Call. Special mention there for Mr. Sam Chess, ladies and gentlemen, with the trombone. Mr. Sam Chess. And we're going to call Audrey back. I don't think I've introduced you to our wonderful pianist, have I? I've managed to overlook you several times because you're behind me. Mr. Dalton Ridenauer at the piano, ladies and gentlemen. Forgive me, Dalton. Audrey's back. She's going to sing another classic song, this one with lyrics by Johnny Mercer. Now, this is one called Satin Doll, another one with an illustrious following, Satin Doll, but actually it was Billy Strayhorn's name for his mom. He called her his Satin Doll. Here we go.
Cigarette holder, which whips me over my shoulder. He digs me, I'm carrying that satin doll. Baby, can we go? I'll step in, careful amigo. You're flipping, speak sliding, my satin doll. Well, he's nobody's fool, so he's playing it cool as can be. I'll give it a whirl, but I ain't for no boy catching me. Oh, switcheroo, telephone number. Well, you know I'm doing that rumba. Will know, and that in my satin doll. Cigarette holder, which whips me over my shoulder. He digs me, I'll cat in that satin doll. Baby, can we go? I'll step in, careful amigo. You're flipping, speak sliding, my satin doll. Well, he's nobody's fool, so he's playing it cool as can be. Well, I'll give it a whirl, but I ain't for no boy catching me. Oh, switcheroo, telephone number. I ain't in doing that rumba. Ain't getting, I'm counting that satin doll. And that in my satin doll.
Audrey Martells, ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. Sam Chess, Satin Doll. All right, this next one was composed by Mercer Kennedy Ellington, Duke's son, and arranged, I think, by Ellington or Strayhorn. It featured a little bit the original Ellington drummer, Sonny Greer. So we're going to have Kevin play for you on this one. It's called Jumpin' Pumpkins. Not pumpkins, but pumpkins, whoever he was. Or she. Kevin Dawn, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin Dawn, Jumpin' Pumpkins. We're going to call Audrey back to the stage. Where is she? She disappeared. Are you there, Audrey? There you are. I'm sorry. We're skipping one and jumping to you because we need more Audrey Martells in our lives. Here we go. Another classic Ellington song. It is called Do Nothing Till You Hear From Me. I don't know why I'm telling them this. You could be telling them this. There you go.
So we're going to do this a little slower, a little sexy. One, Do nothing till you hear from me. Pay no attention to what's said. Why others tear the seam of anyone's dream? Well, that's over my head. Do nothing till you hear from me. At least consider our romance. If you should take the words of others you heard, well, I haven't got a chance. True, I've been seen with someone new, but that doesn't mean that I've been untrue. When we're apart, the words in my heart reveal how I feel about you. Some kiss may cloud my memory, and other arms may hold a thrill. But please do nothing till you hear it from me, and you never, ever will. True, I've been seen with someone new, but that doesn't mean that I've been untrue. When we're apart, the words in my heart reveal how I feel about you. Some kiss may cloud my memory, and others' arms may hold a thrill. But please do nothing till you hear it from me, and you never, ever will. No, you never, ever will. No, you never will. And you never, ever will.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Audrey. Well, ladies and gentlemen, our time with you is already drawing to a close. I'm afraid we have time for one more number. Before we go, we should say a very big thank you to Roger Kaufman. A big thank you to John Hasse. A big thank you to the Westport Library, to Travis and Eric, who are doing sound for us up there. And to these wonderful musicians, ladies and gentlemen, I won't detail them all again. The New York All-Star Big Band, thank you very much. We're going to leave you with Audrey singing Duke's philosophy, my philosophy. Apparently this was based on a saying that Bubba Miley used to throw around back when he was with the band. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing.
what I do, what I do, what I do, what I do, da da do. Y'all can clap along with this one. Come on. Well, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Do I, 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 do I. It don't mean a thing. All you got to do is sing. Do I, 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 do I. Well, it makes no difference if it's sweet or hot. Come on and give that rhythm everything you've got. Well, it don't mean a thing. All you got to do is sing. Do I, 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 do I. It don't mean a thing. All you got to do is sing.
Audrey Martells, ladies and gentlemen.
On your feet for the all-star big band jazz from James Langton from New York City. And thank you for coming. Drive safely, everyone. There they go. What a night. What a night. What a night.